Okay, hello everyone. So today we will be getting into the third lesson. This is the part two of our adjectives series. We did the basics last week, and today we'll be talking about part two, and we'll be jumping into some more specific adjectives next week. Again, as you know, or as you hopefully know, if you have any questions, feel free to type them out into the channel at any time during the lesson. I or someone else will be happy to answer them. With that in mind, let's go ahead and jump into the lesson. We're using the lessons that are inside of Renshu, so if you ever need to go back and check these, they're waiting there for you. So, up until now, we've only talked about positive adjectives. And when I say positive, I don't mean, adjectives in the sense that they're good, cute, beautiful, energetic, hardworking. It's not that. I mean, positive is in the cute versus not cute, or expensive versus not expensive. We've only talked about the positives, but what if you need to switch them over and, heaven forbid, tell someone that you want to say that they're not cute, or this is not new, or whatnot? With adjectives in Japanese, you are actually conjugating the adjective. And this is a bit of a departure from English, where we don't do anything to adjectives. We use other verbs to say, he is happy, he was happy. Or if we are saying someone is cute or not cute, we'd say cute, and we just put that word not in the front of it. And all of a sudden it's the opposite of what it was before. With Japanese, however, the actual adjective itself changes in many cases. You see the word kawaii is no longer kawaii. Yasui or cheap is no longer yasui. They actually change the form that they have. And so let's take a look at, how to do that, and then we'll practice it. So we've got our adjective that we keep coming back to, genki. I hope everyone's genki today. And as we were talking a bit before this thing got started, when we get down to the technical bolts and nuts and bolts that most people don't worry about or don't care about, when you look at genki itself is not an adjective. When you look at the actual word, and it is the na that turns it into an adjective. And so with na adjectives, if we are changing them into the negative form, so let's say one of you, I'm sure there's a few people in the group today that just aren't feeling it. You're here, which is great, but you had a long day. Maybe it's the evening, you're tired, or you're just getting over a cold. You're not genki. And as much as you would like to, say you can't talk to someone in Japanese and say, not genki. That's not going to work. And so how do we switch that over? Genki is, and na adjectives are pretty simple in what they do. The na, if you want to think of it as the na changing. This is not technically the case, but this might be the easiest to, picture in your head. We stop using the na, and we use this little guy called janai. So, if you are not feeling it today, you might be genki janai. Or if someone is not particularly quiet, you might say shizuka janai. If you're looking at a room that's all messy and you don't want to say it's messy, but for example, someone said, "Oh, my room's clean," and you want to say, "Oh, it is not clean," you would say kirei, and then you follow it up with janai. And that's all there is to it. This takes it and switches it over into the negative form. And so here we have genki. If someone is genki, if they are not genki, they'd be genki janai. Now, how do we actually use this? So let's go back real fast. Zenny, that's an excellent question, and I'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. But really good question. So how do we use it? Just a little while ago, if we were talking about, someone that's in the classroom or someone that we see, And actually, let's switch off the people. We were talking about cats before. Let's talk about cats. And if we said, man, that's an energetic cat, it's a cat that it's just jumping around the room, walking up and down the walls, we might say, genki na neko. Or if we were using our A wa B pattern that we've used so often, we might say neko wa genki desu. These are the ones we've already done. So let's picture that cat literally going up and down the walls, and then all of a sudden it just stops. It stops, falls down, and of course it's a cat, so it's not going to hit the ground. It's going to land on all 4 feet, and then it just lays over and takes a nap. And you say, well, that cat's not really genki anymore. And so first we're going to take the genki. We're going to add that genki janai to being not genki, not energetic, not really in good shape. And we just have this. Genki janai neko. Notice that the na is not there anymore. That's why I said if you want to, you might think of it as when the na is present, you're taking that na out and you're replacing it with janai. And Renshu has a much less exciting example. If you're talking about a teacher that walks in and is trying to say, okay, class, today we're going to talk about page 7. You might say they're a genki janai sensei. And you just stick it right in front of the noun. Reshi, we're going to do that pattern in just a second. So you're really, you're on the ball. But let's do a few more examples of these adjectives coming in front of the nouns. So we've got our unenergetic or not energetic teacher here. We have a desk that, hopefully this is none of you that have this, that have all the books jammed in and, pushed into the desk. A kirei janai tsukue, a desk that's not clean. And it's worth pointing out that, in English, if we saw a desk and it wasn't clean, what would we say? We would say, that desk isn't clean, or that desk is dirty, that desk is messy. We tend to use the be verb, is, or are. And you might be inclined to always switch over to that in Japanese, but sticking these adjectives, these negative adjectives, in front of nouns is very common in Japanese. And so if you're trying to force a translation out of this, you would say the not clean desk. And who says, oh, look at the not clean desk? It's not something we typically say in English, but it's common and natural in Japanese. We think of the not often coming later on in the sentence, in the verb. Here, it's part of the adjective itself. And so keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to jump back up, and Reshi had an excellent question. So let's go back to cats. And if anyone can find me a nice picture of a genki cat and a genki janai cat to go with these sentences, I'd appreciate it. So we have there's our genki cat right there. So look at Reshi's, GIF and go up a couple of lines, and we have genki janai. All right, no more pictures. We got our 2. As far as I'm concerned, those are the best pictures I've ever seen. If we scroll back up, neko wa genki desu. This is what we did before. We have our noun in the first spot, and then we have the adjective describing it in the second spot. So how do we describe it in the negative form? Now, there's a few different ways that we can do. One is going to be using what we just did. Let me type it out for you. Neko wa genki janai desu. And hey, this is the same thing we stuck in front of the noun, except now it's coming in that slot in our A wa B desu pattern. This is totally okay. This is natural Japanese, but if you're ever reading this in a textbook or in a situation like this, there's a little asterisk that comes after this, a tiny little asterisk, which means the asterisk will tell you this is not quite as polite as you can get. This is still polite Japanese, but it is not the most polite Japanese. It is becoming more and more common in spoken Japanese, so much that when I was in university, and this was 20 some odd years ago, the Genki textbook that I had, I do not believe it had this formation at all. It was not included when discussing sentence patterns using adjectives. However, it does appear in the textbook now. It's 2 revisions later, and it appears. So the question is, okay, if this one is, not super polite, okay, what's the polite one? What are we looking for? And again, this is going to cover you most of the time, unless you're talking to someone in a rather formal situation. You shouldn't have any worries about using this. However, there is another way you can do it. And instead of saying genki janai, you would say this. Genki de wa arimasen. Alternately, you could say genki ja arimasen. And the beginning of the sentence is the same. So if we were going in order of increasing or decreasing formality, we'd start off with Neko wa genki de wa arimasen. Cat's not feeling it. The next one would be genki ja arimasen. This is still perfectly polite. You could use this in any situation without a problem. And then if we're getting a smidge more casual, but still we're on the polite level, we have neko wa genki janai desu. And this is what you're going to hear most often. And I don't have any proof of this, but my guess as to why it has become more common is that it lets you switch more easily between casual and polite, because this is beyond the scope of today's lesson. But if you were to take this and say, what's the casual way of saying this? All you would do is drop that des off the end. And so to say this casually, you would say, neko wa genki janai. And so you can almost speak in a casual form and just stick a des on the end of it and cover yourself in a large number of cases. And so again, this is just a hunch, but perhaps that's why this has become more popular and more common in Japanese spoken dialogue. Okay, we have covered the na adjectives. With na, all you do is add that janai onto the end of it. So let's practice a little bit before we switch over to the e adjectives. And let's talk about, things that are not something else. And since we're on the topic of cats, let's branch it out and let's do animals. So here's what I'd like you to do. Give me a sentence and a picture. Give me a sentence and a picture. And the picture can be animated, but for example, and let's stick with Genki, because Genki, I love Genki, and let's see if I can find a good, there we go. Inu wa genki janai desu. So I'm going to give you a minute, and you don't have to use Genki. You can use another non-adjective if you'd like. A few of the other ones that we did earlier, we did shizuka, which is quiet. We did kirei, which can be pretty, but it can also mean clean. Not necessarily in the I washed it so it's clean sense, although that can work, but also the clean as in not messy. A desk is clean, not because you wiped it down, but because you don't have pencils and papers everywhere. Now, if you want to practice the sentence, but you don't want to find a picture, of course, that's fine. That's completely okay. and practicing is not required, we like to see you do it. It's a good chance to practice. This is a relaxing, atmosphere, environment. But, feel free to do it if you want to, or to just, watch and, see what other people are doing. So our first entry, we have oni wa kirei janai desu. Except kirei, kirei. Get that R in there, not the N. But what other sentences can you think of? And of course, if you have questions about, the sentence, as in, does this sentence work? Can I use this? This is the perfect time to ask. Nibutsu, that one is a E adjective, and the janai only works with the na adjectives. We're about to do E adjectives in just a minute. And so if you want to take that sentence and hold on to it, it'll be perfect. Reshi, same thing. Yowai is an E adjective. And so the janai only works with na adjectives. Only works with na adjectives. Fuzzy's talking about a desk that's not clean. Kirei janai desu. Kirei janai tsukue desu. Megumi's talking about an octopus. Octopuses are considered very intelligent. Oroka janai desu. But they're looking good. And I feel that typically people know less not adjectives than they do E adjectives. I'm not sure why. Double negatives, can you give me an example? I think people typically have about 5 E adjectives for every not adjective that they know. But we're about to jump into E, so don't worry. Zenny, you can do that, and now studying, that's a verb, and we're not diving into verbs for several lessons. We're still keeping it simple with adjectives. But I'll give you, I'm not going to get into the explanation of how you do this because it will sidetrack us, but let me give you a quick answer. If you want to say, for example, if something is not expensive, not expensive is, but excuse me, let me switch over to, let's not do not expensive, because let's stick with the not adjectives. If we're doing the genki, we've been doing, not energetic would be genki janai. Not energetic would be genki janaku wa nai. So lots of nais in there. And you can ask about that more after the lesson if you'd like. Okay, let's switch over to the adjective type that everyone loves, the E adjectives. Now, with the E adjectives, these require a bit more work, a little bit more work when you are switching them. They don't use the janai. Now you're starting to notice this nai thing, that kind of sounds like a negative, it means negative, and it does. And we're going to see it pop up with verbs, negating nouns as well, and with adjectives. The nai is just everywhere. Now with an adjective that is an E adjective, what you do is, let's take atarashi, new. You drop the E and you add a kunai. which the last time we talked about this, someone mentioned this. So if this helps you remember it, kunai is one of those ninja, those throwing knives the ninjas use. So with E adjectives, you're dropping the E and you're adding a ninja throwing knife. You're adding a kunai. So if we have kawaii, it would be kawaii kunai. Notice I dropped the E, added kunai. We have takai, it would be takakunai. And with atarashi, you drop the E, atarashikunai. Kawaii, kawaii kunai. Let's practice for just a minute. I'm going to give you the verb, and please give me the negative form of it. Not the verb, excuse me, the adjective. Okay? How about karai, spicy? Give me the negative form. Karakunai. Yes. Okay. How about yasui, inexpensive or cheap? Yasukunai. Okay, I'm going to make it a little harder. I'm going to give you just the English. So think about the Japanese and give me the negative form. How about not blue? That's something you say all the time. Hey, look at that not blue cloud over there. Aokunai. Okay, how about not early? Not early. And hayakunai. And bonus question, how about not fast? Hayakunai. Yes, same hiragana, so same pronunciation, different kanji. Hayakunai. And one more, not late. Let's do the opposite. So not early, how about not late? Late is osoi. So as several people are typing, osokunai. All right, trick question. How about the adjective e, good? All right, I see several answers. I see one coming up more than often. E is special. It's the only irregular one. Yay! And E in the negative form is yokunai. As to why that is, if you ever see it written in kanji, you might see, now it's not that often that you see it, but the kanji is written this way. And more often than not, there's actually two ways to read this kanji. There's E and there's yoi. And they both mean exactly the same thing. They both mean good. And so yoi, if you want to think of it, is the real version of it. It's the real version of the adjective. And over time, I haven't looked this up, but I'm presuming over time, E became more common just because languages evolve, as they're used. And although E became especially more casual situations, the more common way to say good, when you switch it to the negative form or the te form, as we'll see in a minute, it switches back to the spelling of the original one. So with E, if you're talking about something, this is not good at all. So if you want to say this lesson or this event is not good, you would say ibento wa yokunai. Please don't say that. Just think it, but don't type it out. So with E, you switch over to yokunai. Now it is the only verb or the only adjective that does this. So let's take a look at some examples. Before we jump into the examples, let me give you another kind of trick question. Does anyone know what cool is in Japanese? How do you say cool? That shirt is cool. It's one of those tricky ones. that Raito, everyone else I believe can hear me because they're responding to me. So so kakui, it's one of those ones that's got the double consonants, which drives people crazy. And not only does it have double consonants, it has an extended vowel. So it's kakui. The K on the ko is double, and then the ko is longer. And it ends in E. Now, literally, kako actually means like shape or figure. And E is the E that we're talking about. So if you say someone's cool, you say that person's kakui. In a more literal sense, you're like, oh, the way they look, their figure is cool, is good. But because it's got that E on it, this E is the same E we're talking about. So if you're ever feeling mean, and please don't do this, but if you want to say someone's not cool, then you would say kakko yokunai. So you will see other what you might call compound adjectives where they end in that double E and it's referring to that the good that we're talking about. And in those cases, they conjugate in the same way. They conjugate in that yokunai formation. So let's take a look at some examples. So if we have a bad student, which of course is none of you here, it would be a yokunai gakusei. If you are or a not good student, you're not saying it's a bad student because there's a different word for bad. Warui is bad. So again, this sounds strange to us when we're translating it. We try and think, wait, no one says not good student. But again, in Japanese, it's common to say this. It's natural. If you are in the housing market these days, you've probably given up on buying a new house and you're looking for an atarashikunai ie, a house that is not new. And this is one day I feel like Renshu might be taken to court over this one slide. Kawaikunai neko, a not cute cat. We know that's not true. So let's take this and let's practice with it a little bit before we jump into the back half of our lesson. So again, let's go with dogs because I'm not really a dog person. And let's say you see a dog that's not cute. You could say, Inu wa kawaiku nai desu. Look, just like before, we are having that nai, and then the des comes in right after that. We could also say, we could put it right in the front, and we could say kawaiku nai inu. So it can go in either place. But of course, I'm kidding. All pets are awesome. And let's use our kunai to talk about. Let's do this. Let's talk about products. Let's talk about things that you can buy. And let's focus on a few different adjectives. We have takai, which is expensive. We have yasui, which is cheap. Not necessarily in the cheap as in low quality, but just cheap as in inexpensive. We have e, which is good. We have kawaii, which is cute. But let's focus on the negatives. So let's try making sentences using our A-wa-B des pattern. And so I'm going to start I'm not an iPhone person. I'm more of an Android kind of guy, although, everyone likes what they like. But I think most people can agree that iPhone wa takai desu. Oh, which is not what we're studying. So let's try this. iPhone wa yasukunai desu. There we go. There's the negative form. iPhone wa yasukunai desu. So let's focus on the negatives and think about something and say this is not expensive, or this is not cheap, or this is not good. I'm going to jump out for just a minute while you all put your examples out, and I'll be right back. How are we doing? PlayStation wa yasukunai desu. Yeah. Octopuses are not cute. I'm not so sure about that. Danny's trying to use some more complex grammar using the nanimo. Nanimo is a tricky thing to use, especially for beginners, because it requires that you form the rest of the sentence in a different way. So you'd actually have to say something more like, there's nothing. Things that aren't cute don't exist, is what you'd end up saying in Japanese. You'd say something like, kawaikunai mono wa nai. And I wanted to point out one thing. Kaori just put up a sentence, miruku wa takakunai. And that is, if we were doing polite, that would not be polite because it doesn't have the des. But this is a cool thing that just dropping the des in a lot of situations is what takes your Japanese from polite to casual. And so that's a good example of the casual form. It's just dropping that des off of there. Also, this is more of a vocab note. Miruku is not what we would call milk in Japanese, although it is a word in Japanese, which is what confuses people a lot. The word for milk is gyunyu. Now, then you say, well, but I look up milk and it says miruku is milk in Japanese. So what's going on? Miruku is often used inside of other names of products to refer to something that has milk in them. So it might be a cookie that's milk flavored, which those exist. And so miruku would be in there. Or it might be an extra ingredient inside of like coffee. Usually you say you want cream, but it might say that this coffee includes milk. It's not dairy in English exactly. It is milk. It's just I don't have a good example because you wouldn't say, dairy can cover cheese as well. But this miruku literally means milk. But if you're talking about the straight up milk that you would get in a carton or a bottle or a bag, wherever you happen to be in the world, that's gyunyu. Depending on if it's mixed in with something else or if it's flavored, it might be using that miruku. Okay, we've talked about milk enough. Let's jump back onto what we are doing. So we've talked about negation. Now let's talk about one more thing. We're going to broach a topic that when we eventually reach verbs, it's something that drives a lot of people crazy. And it's not that bad, especially with adjectives. It's the first baby step. But we are going to do something that's called this. It's called te form. And you've probably heard of te form before. You might have had nightmares about it. And te form means a couple of different things. But what we're going to be talking about is how te form applies to adjectives. So let's take a look at the screen first. And first, I'm going to tell you how to make the te form. It is relatively easy. With our e adjectives, you can see what's happening. The e drops off, and the kute, ku and te, gets added on after that. So the te form of puri which is on the screen, is furukute. The te form of aoi is aokute. The te form of subarashi is subarashikute. Or going back to the one we've been using a lot, the te form of kawaii is kawaikute. Now, let me give you a few. So give me the te form real fast, okay? Tall. Tall. Takakute. How about short? Let's go with physical dimensions. Short. Mijikakute. How about short in the sense of tall as in height? Like you wouldn't say a building is mijikai. That's short as in a horizontal distance. Hikukute. So that's more like low, right? But we would say low in English, but it would also mean not tall, as in it's a lower vertical dimension. Okay. And okay, good. So these are the te forms. And so what are they used for? I hinted at them before, and I said Japanese doesn't like it when you take the same type of word and just glob it next to another word. So if we were talking about a cat, as you know, it's our natural thing as humans to do, you might say a cat is beautiful, lovely, cool. Look at that cat. It's cute, sassy, and awesome. And I'm going to type out what I just said. If we are using, 3 or more, we'll use commas. But if we were just using 2, we might say something like cute and sassy. In Japanese, if we were to say, if something is, this isn't usually 2 things that you would put together, but say you were talking about a cat and you say that cat is cute and fast. Because why not? Those are the things you're talking about. And you say kawaii and hayai. You can't just say kawaii hayai neko. It doesn't work. You need, here's that word I was talking about before, you need glue. Te form doesn't, in most cases, te form does not mean anything. As in, you cannot see te form typically and say, oh, it has this meaning in English. Like, here's the word that te form translates into. It doesn't work that way. Te form has a job. And what's te form's job? It's glue. It's glue when we are sticking together multiple adjectives. So let's take a look at that. The screen is just showing you what we talked about before. You drop those E's and then you stick on the kute. So we have furukute, we have aokute, we have subarashikute. What about good? That special one that we talked about before? What would the te form of good be? Yokute. Exactly. So it's yoi, or in other words, it's yokute. Now, we're going to front load all the spelling rules onto the front and then actually do some examples. So don't worry if you can't remember all this. We're going to practice it at the end. Now, here's something interesting. If we want to, these are the te forms for the e adjectives we just did. However, let's go back to these negative forms we were just talking about. Takakunai. Takakunai. And Zeni, we're about to talk about, we did, but we're going to hit the te usage again just a second. How do we get the te form out of takakunai? Any ideas? Deshi is correct. You see that E on the end and you say, hey, it kind of looks like an E adjective. Technically it is. When you get into the actual, nitty gritty, it is an E adjective. And so with the negative forms, instead of chisakunai, you would have chisaku nakute. Same thing with the non-adjectives. We were talking about that cat playing around, genki janai. And if we want to link it up with something else, we use genki janakute. Now, last one. Now, I and everyone else that teaches grammar, teaches Japanese, they call it the te form. However, the te form is sometimes de. That no one will ever call it the te de form. It will only be called the te form. However, sometimes it takes the place of, or it is formed as de. And with non-adjectives, that's what happens. Is if you have something like genki, you cannot say this, genki te. And you say, oh hey, I made the te form. Nor can you say genki kute. These don't work. Let me get Kal-chan out here to make sure that that's very clear. There we go. Genki te, genki kute don't work. We need genki de. We need steki de. We need iya de. Steki means wonderful. Iya means like no. It's like something. It's just something that you kind of dislike. That's just a not good thing. It's like no, thank you. Not pleasant. Something you don't want. So we've got all of our te forms. Now let's mix them all together. I'm going to give you a quiz before we actually use them. Okay? So I'm going to give you the adjective. You please give me the te form. Okay? How about, I'm going to keep it easy. I'm going to give you the Japanese and not the English. Ski. Ski da yo. To like. You like something that's likable. What's the de form? Ski de. Thank you. How about the opposite? If you're talking about nato, like I would. Kirai. Kirai de. It's the non-adjective, so you need the kirai de. Right. How about if something is heavy? This rock is heavy. Omoi. Drop the e. Don't forget, drop that e. So omokute. Yes. How about if something is not early? Not early. What's the te form for that? Not. Don't forget the na. Or the not part of that. Hayaku nakute. And it's, for those of you that haven't started studying kanji yet, it's times like this where you start to see, oh, the kanji really actually makes this simpler, because you start to see these repetitions of characters and the hiragana starts to feel really, really long. All these extensions on top of the base word. Okay, let's practice sentences. So as I said, this is for glue. And it's for when we're gluing things that are the same together. It's for when we're gluing similar things together, by which I mean adjectives. And I don't mean e-adjectives and e-adjectives, or not adjectives and not adjectives. I mean adjectives. So if you're linking two or more of any kind of adjective, you're going to use this. It can be e and e, it can be na and na, it can be e and na, doesn't matter. So let's get back to that cat that we've been talking about. And so if we have a cat that is cute and famous and yellow, it almost sounds like Garfield, but not quite. It would be kawaikute, yumei de, kiroi neko. Or if we are talking about this, I had this dish recently that it's mabo tofu. I say it with the Japanese pronunciation, which is a Chinese dish. On top of noodles, on top of udon or ramen. So it's ramen with mabo tofu. or mapo tofu on top of it. And there was tonkatsu, the pork cutlets on top of that. It was a monster of a dish. And it was three things. It was big, dekai. It was expensive, takai. And it was spicy, karai. And let's say tabemono for the noun. So try putting those together. Can you put all three of those together and then stick it onto the noun for me? The huge, expensive, spicy food. Dekai is bigger than oki. Dekai is like huge. Oki is big. Dekai is huge. And it was huge. It was quite big. I'm not going to comment on whether anyone's correct or not correct until I see a few come out. Oh, and Choco Keiki did the opposite. They put it in our AB, our Awabides pattern. So we've got both. And one person, I won't mention who, but one person made the mistake I wanted someone to make. So if you made this mistake, thank you, because I wanted someone to see it. So the answer is, I see two answers. I'm going to look at FIFOs and I'm highlighting it. So if you're looking at the stream, you can see it. Dekakute, takakute, karai, tabemono. Notice how FIFO put the te in between each time that we use the adjective. Similarly, Choco Keiki used kanji, but I will go ahead and read it out. Kono tabemono wa dekakute, takakute, karai desu. Now, the thing I want you to note is that if you have adjective, 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 and the noun, which I just tossed in there, where's the glue going? The glue is going here. Whoops. Sent it too quickly. Why do we need that glue? We need the glue because we're putting the same thing together. Adjective, adjective, adjective. That means that last adjective that's sitting on the end, it's not gluing itself to something else. You don't have to change that one. So if you have these three adjectives and then the noun coming after it, tabemono, that last adjective, karai, you just leave it as karai. So it would not be karakte tabemono. So to re-emphasize, these adjectives, the glue, this te form, this glue, is used only to link the same things together, adjectives together. Raito, that's a good question. And it looks like Nimo Kemono had the same thing. I actually don't know. It's something I need to look into. My guess is that there probably is a natural ordering to it, but I cannot say what that ordering is. But those are good questions. I'm sorry I can't give you a clear answer on that. Anyway, we are out of time. So any other questions before we wrap things up? That question feels like it's outside of the lesson. I'll be happy to answer it afterwards. Okay, I don't see any questions about the lesson at hand, so I'm going to go ahead and end it. Thank you so much for joining.